Briefly, I wanted to do a review of The Dark Tower. I saw it actually a couple weeks ago. Well, like 2 weeks ago, and I meant to do a review and I ended up not doing it. So I wanted to do just a brief one. I just thought the nature of the movie was interesting, at least as much as the movie itself. Forward. Alright, The Dark Tower is a 90-minute movie based on a 7 Stephen King length series of novels. God, it's such a compression, it's unreal. But that weird element aside, and that's where it comes from anyway, it's really, I liked it. I mean, just right on the cards on the table. I liked it. I thought it was okay. It wasn't great, and it had some cool lines, but if you saw it, you know what I mean. They repeated them like way much too much, to the point it started getting goofy, and that's never good when you're trying to make a scowling kind of serious fantasy. But overall, it was good. The acting was good. The writing was good enough. The compressing 7 novels into one movie, certainly there were enough interesting elements in it, or at least the stuff that was left over. It's watchable. It's fairly watchable. One reason I wanted to do a review of it is because I couldn't help noticing the reviews for it were either, oh, it's pretty good, or this is the worst movie ever made. It has a lot of cool elements that aren't explained. I mean, and that's not a negative. That's very cool. There's not a lot of exposition. It's like we see people who aren't people wearing people disguises. That's never explained, and that's fine. That is great. In fact, it's just a nice weird element, and it's not the only one. There's just tons of stuff like that isn't properly explained or anything like that. And it makes it interesting, like interesting enough to follow. Without that stuff, this would be like hella boring. The actors are good. Idris Elba is great. I mean, like, the actors are just fine. There aren't a lot of them for a series of novels that has a lot of characters with a lot of backstory and a lot of history. There are very few characters in this movie. Very few named characters. It gets a little too apocalyptic too fast, but then the whole movie's only 90 freaking minutes long, so what else are they going to do? I mean, any complaint kind of gets into the meat of what I wanted to discuss, and I wanted to kind of do a setup for it first, but there's not much to set up. It's a neat fantasy, a modern fantasy, has some very interesting elements, very good actors, and some good enough dialogue, by and large. There we go. Moving on to the main attraction. I do these reviews, what are the odds you're going to see it and not like it? And that's where this gets interesting, because I just said this is a pretty good movie. It's okay. It's not bad. What are the odds you're going to see it and not like it? Really freaking high. Like, very good. I'd say at least 2 out of 3. Maybe even 3/4. I'll be fair. Say 2/3. There's a 2 in 3 chance you're not going to like it. Because there are 2 groups of people who are going to take exception with this film. Group number 1, people who have never read any of the Dark Tower series are going to be confused by the weird elements that clearly have some sort of history and backstory, are clearly being rushed, and clearly don't have enough context to properly frame them. It's like there's this whole thing where we're clearly supposed to feel this sort of desolate, like the gunslinger himself has been on this desolate, ages-long path or whatever. There's not enough time to set that up. You know, we're supposed to feel this apocalyptic good versus is not enough time to set that up. It's too little. But everyone talks as though this is like at least the 3rd or 4th part of something significantly longer, like a second season of something, you know, like a Netflix series, which is probably a better format for this anyway. But instead it got a 90-minute movie. So group number 1, people who never read the Stephen King novels that this is based on are going to have problems. They're going to look at parts of this and just be confused and possibly frustrated. Group number 2, people who have read the Stephen King novels are are gonna be pissed because the movie has no time. It's seven. I can't iterate. 7 Stephen King length novels in a 90-minute film. Stephen King novels don't make good movies in general. Short stories make good movies. They're the right length. I mean, you want, for something dialogue heavy, you want something that's roughly, you're going to get 1 minute per page with a lot of variance, a lot of variance on that. Stephen King novels, some of them are 800, 600, 800 pages long. I know at least a few of the Stephen King Dark Tower series books. I mean, they're right over there on the shelf. I could destroy an intruder by throwing one of those down the stairs. Someone who's a big fan of this, or even has just read it, is going to go into this movie with expectations, and then they're going to start watching this movie and wondering where all the characters are. They're going to wonder. They shouldn't wonder why everything's different. Because that's a big duh. I mean, things are different because this is a movie, not a novel. Things that work in a novel don't work in a movie, especially when they have to be hyper compressed, when you have to explain complex ideas and you have no time to do it. You change the ideas into something that fits the format. That's just how it works. Sometimes it's a good change, sometimes it's even a better change. I mean, I've seen, I'm not going to go into it too much, but there are a couple movies where it's clearly very different from the book, but the book and the movie are both good. They're different from one another, they have to be, but I'm trying to think of a really good short cogent paradigm, and the thing that comes to mind is The Watchmen. Not to say that The Watchmen is overall a perfect movie. It is not two movies what the Watchmen, graphic novel was to graphic novels. But the best parts of the Watchmen, the movie, were places where it diverged from the graphic novel. And if this didn't have so much to push into such a small space, maybe it could have done this. This would make a better Netflix series or a better cable series. It would make a terrible TV series because you couldn't do anything. It would look terrible. It would be cheap, which is a lot of Stephen King novels get turned into made-for-TV series that are just laughably bad. Stephen King novels in general don't translate well anyway, simply because the thing that makes his novels really good, I mean, generally they tend to be at least good quality to actually excellent. But the one overriding quality that's always excellent is the writer's voice, the author's voice in his books. And for a lot of his books, that voice doesn't translate to a movie at all. It's completely lost. And then it's not as good. You lose something so crucial to his writing, and you get a movie that's kind of blah. So, what are the odds you'll see it and not like it? Pretty good. I'll say 2/3. There's a good chance you'll see this and not dig it. Would I see this again? Yeah, maybe. I'll probably see a video on demand with someone who hasn't seen it. But it has to be the right audience. Like, it can't be a huge fan of the books because they'll just be pissed off. They'll just be really annoyed. Or they'll get over it. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I had to say about it. That's me. I'm out.